Well, I want to thank the Center of the Media Research Center, and I want to thank Natalie Lawrence and Dr. John Downing for bringing me here. And how many of you are here because you are going to get extra credits? Okay, good. I'll try to make the whole presentation nice. And I'm going to throw at you a lot of information. So if you feel at the end like kind of like frustrated because you couldn't keep up taking notes, I can always like talk to Nabat and maybe send like some information for those of you. I don't know if we want to pass like a sheet of with names and emails addresses, and I can send you that stuff. I would prefer if you pay attention to what I'm trying to explain. And I'm going to put a lot of information on the slides. So just to make myself clear enough, you know, because there's always the issue of the accent in there. The other thing is that there are some films that do not have subtitles. I'm going to try to like talk a little bit while we are watching them. They're very, very brief, so don't be concerned about that. I think in general terms, we would say that we always talk or we regard the documentary as something like is a minor genre, something that comes after mainstream cinema. And even film scholars talk about that, film critics. And this is Alan Rosenthal talking about Christian Metz. And he's saying, well, Christian Metz regards like kind of like puts documentaries in a lower level in the hierarchy of cinema. And that's kind of like that's not right. I mean, they can stand on their own. Bill Nichols, in terms of distribution, I'm going to be talking about contemporary Mexican documentaries and issues of film distribution in Mexico. And Bill Nichols talks, when he explains how documentaries circulate in society, he says, well, it's at the margins of the industry. They are not really industrial works. They are not commercial works. They're always like in art houses, cine clubs, in universities. Like he says, less commercial vein. There's another filmmaker, film scholar who was doing this research on independent cinema. And this Jean-Anne Lower is just commenting on how this author at one point says, like, well, I'm not going to deal with independent documentaries because they're not just the most dominant practice. I'm going to talk about independent cinema, but in terms of fictional works. So it's like we're all pushing aside the documentaries. And another point, Alan Rosenthal says, well, we have this idea that the documentary is perceived as like a very formulaic, you know, the voiceover narration, a montage, something that it's kind of very long, slow pace, very, very boring. And that's kind of just the idea that we have. And to prove that point, because there's always a little bit of truth in all these things, I'm going to show you a documentary that was made in 1950, Memorias de un Mexicano. And this documentary is like a montage film. It collected films from the 1910s during the Mexican Revolution. So familiar with that name, Emiliano Zapata in those images. And those come from 1910s. But it's like this is 1950s, and just to give you an idea of what kind of documentaries maybe all these people are talking about and from where the concept of like a boring, kind of like a slow-paced documentary comes from.
Apenas terminadas las fiestas del centenario, México se inquietaba nuevamente.
So voiceover narration, no subtitles. And it's just talking about all the events that are leading to the Mexican Revolution. And you can see from where all these stereotypes of Mexicans come from, too. Because you're going to see a lot of guys with big hats and guns, rifles. you know. But it's like a lot of images, you know, just telling you a story, narrating a story. And that's kind of like what we see from a lot of documentaries, including the Mexican ones. And he's like the dictator that is going to be dethroned. And it's very, like the style of that era is like a very European, like between French and German kind of style. Even the military is like dressed like a European kind of army. Okay, I think I'm gonna fast forward here. That's kind of like the idea. So we just saw Memorias de un Mexicano, compilation documentary by Carmen Toscano, edited by Carmen Toscano. Okay, one author recently was asking how or why has this genre all of a sudden appeared in movie theaters, in mainstream movie theaters. And she's talking about Fahrenheit 9/11, Bowling for Columbine, Super Size Me, Control Room, those kind of films. And sometimes it depends in the city. You can see those in mainstream cinema, like mainstream movie theaters. But sometimes you still get them in our houses. I mean, they are not really going out of our houses. It depends. If you live in a small town, maybe you're going to get it in our house. But if in like urban, like larger cities, you will find them in mainstream movie theaters. And she's wondering what's going on. But the thing here is like I can't answer that question in the same way an American film scholar doing research on documentaries would answer that, because I am looking at the Mexican context, and things there are just different from here. It's not the same thing. So we have to pay attention to the historical context. That's very important to discuss how documentaries are being marginalized. Because you have the political issues, economic issues, some trends, some practices that are not the same in the United States as they are in Mexico. And for instance, Higgins answers part of her question based on new technology. But what about a country in which 50% of the population lives in poverty? It's not the same thing. I mean, probably 50 or 60 million people down there don't have cable at home or internet access. Sometimes middle-class households won't have cable or internet. So it's a different kind of thing. So I need to define like to what degree is Mexican documentaries distribution limited, how and why this happens, and if it has to do something with the genre in itself. Is there a problem with the genre, just the format? I mean, we can't do like entertaining and also informational pieces when we are doing documentaries? It's not possible. And the issues here is like, if we can't distribute documentaries with important issues in mainstream, through mainstream distribution, then we are talking about a problem of diversity. Not all voices are going to be heard. We're talking about a problem of media control, because a lot of corporations are going to say, we don't want that because that's not commercial. We prefer our products, which are better, are entertaining. And we also have an issue, at least in Mexico, of censorship. We have the Minister of Interior in Mexico has a special agency who is going to approve what works get into circulation. Videos, films. So if they don't get their approval, you won't get those mainstream outlets. And in general, Mexican documentary filmmakers, they face a film industry as many other filmmakers around the world, dominated by Hollywood studios. That's a fact. TV and video ownership is concentrated in the hands of a few corporations. It's like in Mexico, we have 2 TV corporations controlling 5 TV networks. It's like ABC, you find like ABC, channel 5, 8, and 10, you know? Or CBS would have like a channels 12 and 13, I don't know. So it's like a more than one. If you turn to cable television, you will find mostly American channels, but just in the Latin American version. CNN en español, you know, CNN in Spanish, or you will find MTV Latino, those kind of things. Okay, it is really hard to define the documentary. I just want to talk about how complex it is to define it. This idea that is the representation of reality and what is reality, and we can get very philosophical about the thing. Bill Nichols, he says, well, documentaries are whatever documentary filmmakers say that they are. Whatever they say is a documentary, that's a documentary. Whatever the audience says, that's a documentary, that's a documentary. Because that's what makes the documentaries. It's a process. So the documentaries may be changing a little bit in form, and you can say, well, we can allow this. That's OK. And there's going to be a discussion about that. If you need or you want a more precise definition, John Grierson, a British documentary filmmaker a long time ago, said, it is the creative interpretation of reality. And that gives you a lot of room to do whatever you want with the images and sound. Creative interpretation of reality. That's John Grierson, long, long time ago. OK, mostly I'm going to be talking about distribution between 2000 and 2006, produced through Mexican funds and by Mexican filmmakers. And it's always, and I won't get into there. Nowadays, it's really complicated also the issue of nationality, the nation state, those concepts. What is Mexican? You know, there are like Mexicans here in the United States. There are Mexicans in other places. There are second-generation Mexicans around the world, or third generations. You know, so what is really Mexican? And I can get in big troubles because of that, trying to discuss that. So I won't get into that. So basically, I'm just using those 2 parameters. And I'm going to be dealing with an audiovisual field. This is like a concept, an ideal concept, the audiovisual field. That is not the same as the film industry. I'm going to be talking very briefly about the political economic context, and obviously the film industry, the structure and the practices in there. Okay? Just in general, in the audiovisual field, I'm going to talk about a documentary that is always referred as non-commercial. Documentaries, they are not commercial. They're not interesting for the industry. The political economic context is neoliberalism, free market, whatever the audience wants. Let's make no rules about what gets in the market. Let's not mess with the market. Let's not make any regulation about the market. The film industry, that because of those ideas, has become more beneficial for exhibitors and distributors. I mean, the producers, they get about 10% of the profits, if there are profits. And the exhibitors get like a 60%. They don't invest in the films, but they get 60% from screening them. Then distributors, they get 30%. Okay? Okay, that's when I say like I have a lot of information. Okay, so filmmakers, they are part of an audiovisual field, along with film executives, film critics, film scholars. Okay, And what the filmmakers are trying to do is they are trying to take a position in the field. They want to be avant-garde filmmakers, or they want to be a very successful, commercially speaking, filmmaker. So they take some stance, they follow some path to reach that position, and then they want to defend that position. How they do that? Through their films, for one thing, but also through arguments. You know, they can say, "Oh, this film, this was very badly. That was a very bad film because of this or that. I mean, it was like a commonplace, things that were heavy-handed, and they can disqualify a film. This film is not legitimate, you know, to receive accolades or awards. But they are saying like, no, this is the one that the films. Another filmmaker may say, this is the films that people want to see. These are the good ones. These are the real thing, because that's what people want to see. So they are trying to reach and stay in those positions. They're trying to either go for prestige or for economic success. So this is this fight. So there are guys like, I don't care, I'm gonna make money. So I'm gonna do a comedy, and I'm gonna be successful. And this is the thing, the real thing, because that's what the audience wants to see. And there's other guys say, no way, I'm gonna try to have like an artistic approach, and I don't care about money, or I don't care what the government are saying, or what they are allowing me to show. So this is an idea of the field. And for instance, the producer of a scary movie, they might be making a lot of money, they may be getting a lot of economic capital, but losing some of symbolic capital. That means like a prestige. But they're happy with that. And there's, in the other corner, you have Un Chien Andalou. I don't know if you are familiar with that film. That's like a surrealist film in the 1920s made by Luis Buñuel. And it's like an artistic piece. Maybe it didn't make a lot of money, but it has a lot of prestige. So that's the capital they got, symbolic capital. So you can be either here or you can be there, and you may try to hold to that position. So this is this thing about who is legitimate, who gets to be here or who gets to be there. And there are some people who are saying, why can't we move now in like a neutral area, and we can have both? In this moment in which globalization is moving all these products, like reproducing classic films or classic documentaries so easily, and everybody gets a chance, you know? Okay, so we are looking at the struggles in the Mexican audiovisual field. And in these struggles, we have this discourse, a series of statements saying that it is just for like a very special interest groups, overly political for commercial venues. It's boring, and you need a certain level of education that not so easily you are going to get it, that not so easily you are going to understand a documentary. And local industries, the local Mexican film industry doesn't care about it. Political and economic practices, like at the industry and the government, may use those arguments to try to marginalize the documentaries. Well, if not everybody likes those films, why do we have to make rules to put them on movie theaters? Nobody's going to go and sit in there. You know, those kind of things, those kind of arguments. Okay, I'm going to show you another documentaries from the and between 1968 and 1970. It's about social movement that in October the 2nd, 1968, was crushed by the government. This was a student movement, and this was a demonstration. And because the Olympic Games were coming, the government didn't want problems, social problems, you know, in front of like international press. So they want to get rid of the protesters, you know, and they sent the army there. And this is like those kind of documentaries also that are kind of like badly made, very, very crude, and not the best pictures. It was made by the students that were like in part of the movement. So again, this kind of like a help into that discourse of documentaries not being really, really interesting. No subtitles. The narration is taken from an account by international journalist Oriana Fallaci. I don't know if you're familiar with that name. It was very famous in the 1960s, 1970s. And that's the demonstration in the place it's called Tlatelolco. And they're talking about how the army started to surround the area. And you're going to see a helicopter and some flares, like in the war, when they start like shooting some flares. It means like it's time for the attack. And she was in Vietnam, so she knew about that. So she's telling the students to to end the demonstration because something bad is going to happen, but they don't believe her. Part of this footage came from the students. I mean, the students were taking their cameras to capture the events, but also came from CBS News because a lot of film cameras were confiscated by the army. And you hear the actual sound recording, the shotguns. A lot of still images. Let me just move on. So this documentary obviously never got in the mainstream distribution, even though at that time the government owned the most important movie theater chain. It never got actually out of the university. The Mexican National University never get out of there. I mean, it was screened, but only in small auditoriums. That's the only screenings this documentary got at that time. 30 years later, actually, we got it on video, but a new government was already in. The party that was ruling at that time lasted from 1928 till 2000. The same party. Can you imagine the Republicans doing that? Maybe for some of you may say, hey, great. I don't know. Okay, and in the field, this is what you will hear at that time, 1965. Okay, the documentaries are just short films that are propagandistic because the government was funding a lot of documentary production, but just for their own purposes. So in movie theaters, they will show those before the feature film. So it would be like the previews, and it would be just short documentaries showing the policies of the government. So when people would say, oh, I want to see some documentaries, they say people, oh, no, I don't want to see that. Carlos Mendoza has described the Mexican documentary like an impoverished relative of fiction. You know, in how do you pronounce that? Pariah? Is that the right word? Pariah? Pariah? And you know what does that mean? The lowest in the social class, the lowest in the social hierarchy. Okay, this is a statement made by the director of one of the most important movie theater chains in Mexico. He was saying to me, we show all films that get distribution, and then he would say, oh, but we don't show documentaries. If they get distribution, we don't show those because they are not commercial. However, he didn't know that they were showing one at that time. It was like an American documentary, but they were showing Promises. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Same time I was doing the interview. Okay, Alfonso Lopez, a Mexican distributor of documentaries, was saying those things. Nobody is interested in the film distribution of any documentary. And he was doing that at that time when I was doing the interview. And he said, well, there's not commercial value. And I don't want to invest any money in promoting them. I'm not interested in that. And I think he's making money out of the DVD sales instead of the movie theater exhibition. And he's doing just that because he gets some money from one official institution. Victor Ugalde, who is a film official in Mexico, he says there's no exhibition policy to support documentary exhibition. There's no education like a policy, to tell the people how to look at them, what they are. And we have to understand that the documentary, the consumption of documentaries is related to education. So in Mexico, we have a low level of education, just in general. So we first have to raise that level before we can show documentaries in mainstream movie theaters. But some people are saying like, that's not the truth. I mean, a lot of independent filmmakers doing social movement documentaries, they will say, a lot of people that I'm working with, they love what we're doing. Okay, Luis Ruiz, from another a mainstream distributor, he's saying, we don't handle those, and we only distribute this one because we saw that as a commercial film. Oh yeah, we distributed that one. Well, we saw Fahrenheit 9/11 as a commercial film. And so it's like, but didn't you say it was a documentary? So, yeah, but it has so much hype that we took it. So it's just the money, basically, what that guy meant. And this guy from another Mexican distributor, he was saying, we do this as a service to Mexican culture. Because once that you are going to put a movie in a movie theater, you have to make a copy and send it to the National Film Archive. So he's saying, by putting at least one copy of this film in the mainstream movie theaters, I'm going to give, as a donation almost, to the National Film Archive, a copy of this documentary so they can have it. So it's like, we don't do it for business. And he was comparing, I mean, they distributed this one. It's about an artist, a Mexican artist. And he's saying, we know that people would prefer to go to see Happy Feet than to go and see Gabriel Orozco. And I said, well, why are you doing this? Don't you lose money? But they don't. Because the distribution of the ticket price, they get 30% of that. And they don't pay anything to the producers or filmmakers until they are covered. Once they are covered, they're going to get some share, and then they will give some money to the producer. So the producers, more often in Mexico, they don't get to see any profits at all. Okay, Juan Carlos Rulfo was saying that TV is still a really constrained, like a constrained format, and the film language will allow them to do more things. And the problem with distributing those in the mainstream is that distributors don't know how to deal with a documentary. They don't understand how to promote a documentary. So let's show Del Olvido al No Me Acuerdo. This film critic, Luis Tobar, he was saying that he was discussing the films that were at that time on movie theaters, the Mexican films that were on movie theaters. and Del Olvido No Me Acuerdo was getting distribution. And he said, well, but I won't talk about Del Olvido No Me Acuerdo because it's not a commercial. It's not competitive commercial. And this is a film critic. So everybody's like bashing the documentary. And Juan Carlos Rulfo goes to a little town in Mexico where his father was born. His father is a well-known Mexican writer. But what he does is he discovers more in the people that he's interviewing. So it's starts talking about life, love, just in general. And his father becomes just an excuse to talk about that. So let's see that. This is the trailer they showed him to promote the film.
Quiero saber qué descubrieron en México unos aparatos, no sé qué están trayendo los de otra nación, caballos, ¿qué querrán hacer con México?
En esa playa estaba un platillo volador que parecía circo. Se volvía a salir, volvía a perder, se volvía a salir. Volvíamos, estaban parados, estaban haciendo pendejo, ¿verdad? Las dos cosas.
Y la Virgen no nos cuida.
Nos llegó la China.
La Virgen de Guadalupe.
¿Te acuerdas cuánto te llevaste a 60?
Bueno, la primera vez que lo vi, yo sentía el flechazo como
Porque las mujeres, si no les platica uno, pues ¿qué? No, nomás no. Y se trataba de él.
Pero él nunca platica nada. Ya ni se casan las mujeres, las muchachas, porque ya están cansados los hombres de ver vacas.
Mientras ande bien la jugarreta, acomódala bien y ya.
Ah, ese sí sabe. Ese sí no es foto.
Habíamos pocos muchachos, no había tantos como hay ahorita. Había pocos y cualquiera quería ser el rey. Y ahí comenzamos la tentación de quererlo.
¿Quién eres tú? Tu amigo. Ah, ¿serás el diablo? Ah, pues tu amigo. Ah, le dije, entonces ya te conozco, le dije, ay, nos vimos.
Dicen que se van, nomás no lo anden contando, no se vayan a salir con el tiriche colgando.
Del olvido al no me acuerdo. Una película de Juan Carlos Rulfo.
¿Yo qué?
And then the question is like, I don't know, would you be, how to say, enticed to go and watch the film? To, I don't know, to look at a lot of like old people? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of experimentation there, and we are like breaking from the idea of the regular documentary, but then we have to ask those questions too. And some people would say, like Antonio Soria, he's a documentary filmmaker, that we don't even, I mean, they don't should put in any poster or advertising like, this is a documentary. That they should do it like the D word, you know? Don't say documentaries, because it's like the condemnation of the film. And I'm gonna move a little bit faster here, because I may not have enough time to talk about some things. But this is the same idea about the prejudice, the idea that we have about documentaries. So I'm gonna jump a little bit more faster here. Let's see. In terms of the political context, I talk a little bit about how there was like one political party ruling, And the demise of that party started from 1968 to 1982. They tried to fix the whole thing by leaving behind the mixed economic model they had and going into more neoliberal practices. And in 1988, 1994, there were like a lot of selling a lot of private, state-owned companies to private investors. 1994, we have NAFTA, but also the Zapatista rebellion. So the politicians were saying, we're going to the first world. But the Zapatistas, they were saying, no, we're still in the third world. And so that changed a lot of things in the film industry. And then till 2000, in 2000, they lost the regime. I'm going to talk about the film industry in Mexico and just some of the important characteristics of those cultural industries is that in order to maximize audiences, they need to get into monopolistic or oligopolistic practices, controlling the channels of the distribution. So they have also to produce a lot of movies in order to have, like, if they have some failures, few successes will compensate. And there's always a risky business, so they have to follow some formulas in order to be successful. And in recent years, the transformation from 1990 to 2006 is that Canada, before getting into the NAFTA, they said, okay, all the cultural industries are outside of NAFTA because I am saying by the cultural exception that they are important for our culture. And I'm not going to jeopardize the cultural industries. Mexico didn't do that, okay? That's one problem. In 1992, there was a new film law, and basically the government stopped controlling the movie ticket price. So that went up, so it was more attractive for investors. And they reduced the screen quotas we have. 50% Mexican film had to be screened every year, down to 10%. So more Hollywood films got into the market, okay? And there were some attempts in 2003, even before, recognizing that what happened in 1992, 1994 with NAFTA and the new film law was not working for the film industry. So they were trying to create some instruments to get some resources. It didn't help. Now they have this tax incentive, but because it's for local and international productions, that passed. But other things haven't. Like they were trying to get 1 peso, just 1 peso, like a dime, from each ticket sold at the box office, and that will go to a fund for making Mexican films. But Hollywood studios went to the Supreme Court and said this is against free market. So that didn't pass. Okay, we can see here how feature-length documentaries have been very low, actually, since the 1910s till now. There was like a big moment in the 1970s, another one between 1917 and 1930. But it was always because the state had something to do with that. And last, from 2000 to 2006, there are like 5 documentaries have been screened. But there are some issues also with the way they were getting distribution. Here you can see that the production is also very low. In 2005, they produced 13 long-length documentaries. But what was the problem with that? They were not getting a screen anyway. And next time, they just produced 3, and they screened 7. But they are just trying to catch up. So if you produce a documentary in Mexico, it won't get distribution till 2-3 years later, basically. Video production, this is from data that I got from a video contest. Video production is very high. I mean, this is every 2 years, more or less, 130 documentaries are being made. But this is like a video. And movie theaters won't change like their system that they have. You need to have your film on 35 millimeters. They won't screen like a video material. And there's also, this is a very prestigious documentary contest. And this is mostly independent producers participating, but it's also like an international contest. And it's pretty decent, the volume of production. But again, I mean, very few of them, if any, will get mainstream distribution. And these numbers are pretty small. I don't know if you are able to see them. But basically what I'm trying to say is that if you take a look from 2000 to 2006, Mexican films, the production of those is getting higher. You can see from 2002, 14 to 2006, 64. So it's getting higher. The money in the third row, the money that the state is investing is kind of the same. It doesn't matter if you are producing or supporting 25 or 42. It's about the same. What about distribution? Films released in Mexico, it's pretty steady, growing but very, very steady. I don't have the data for 2006, but from 2003 to 2005 is 279, 280. Mexican films released, it's about not quite 10%, not even the film quota we have now, the screen quota we have now. And documentaries are pretty low there, only like a 1 or 2. Just last year, we got 7. But if you see the documentary film released against the Mexican ones, you get in 2004, 12, and only 2 Mexican ones. And you get in 2005, when we produced 13 documentaries, you get 1 and 16 international documentaries distributed. So there's like a marginalization of the Mexican documentary, no matter what. Here are some numbers, and the numbers are also very tricky because the numbers do not favor any argument to defend the Mexican documentary. They will say right away, oh, look at the attendance. 63,000, one of the best. Del olvido, no me acuerdo. Making like close to $200,000. That's the profit. Or not the profit, just the income they were making. They didn't make any profit. So the numbers, those numbers are very, very low in terms of film attendance and income, very, very low. Who gets the distribution? Mostly Mexican film distributors. There's only one Hollywood distributor there, Columbia. And he thought, like, because that documentary in specific was had in the documentary a rock star, like a Mexican rock star, he was going to make a lot of money, but they didn't. It just like a bomb. I mean, it was pretty bad. And let me show you. This is the income they got, but let me show you in comparison with other documentaries. And the important thing here is the number of copies and the investment you can make in copies. For instance, Fahrenheit 9/11 got 162 copies, and it made more than $2 million. March of the Penguins, a French documentary, with only 40, were $1.5 million. Not very far away from, or a little bit from Fahrenheit 9/11, but pretty good for the investment they made. You know, the other guys were putting the documentary everywhere. And the thing with Mexican documentaries, they don't get a lot of copies. Del olvido, no me acuerdo, 13. Alex Lora got 200 because it got like a Hollywood distributor. But that's only the reason. And if you compare with Mexican films, I mean, there are some very good hits there. Amores Perros, with 100 copies, it made $4 million, which is pretty good for the Mexican films. So they're doing okay, but the number of copies, the investment you make in marketing your film is very important, because if you don't have money to make enough copies, that's already like a limit you have. And if you are not a big company, you won't be able to support like a large release, a large number of copies. And let me see if we have time. This is just saying like six industry distributors in Mexico, the MPA distributors, are getting 80% of the film that gets circulated in Mexican movie houses. And let me get to some practices. What they are doing is they are like they're doing market saturation, which is they're releasing about 250 copies for each film they release. So eventually, all those copies are going just to flow the movie theaters. So there's not going to be a space for Mexican films just in general, less for the documentary. So at one point, they are going to actually have like the Da Vinci Code. They will have for every 5 screens, 1 copy. So if you have a movie theater, like a Cineplex, with 15 screens, you're going to have 3 copies of the Da Vinci Code. So it doesn't matter that you have like some Mexican films, some Mexican documentaries waiting. They need to put those because they need to make the money. And sometimes you will go to some of those Cineplexes, and you will see like probably 4 films repeated 2 or 3 times. And so you have to see those films at one point. They control the release dates. They have control of every weekend. I don't know if you noticed at the end of the Del Olvido No Me Acuerdo, the trailer, it says May 2000. It was released till July, because they don't really know when they're going to get their release date. The Da Vinci Code, it was like a world premiere, exactly the same date in every country around the world. So it's whatever they say, and they're going to put your film aside for sometimes, as I said, like 3 years. So they have a lot of leverage, because those are like the big vendors, the big providers of films. So the exhibitors are like whatever they say, man. And block booking is a practice that is prohibited everywhere, but they're in the practice they are doing it. You know, I have these 5 comedies, and I have this blockbuster. Do you want the blockbuster? Here you have my 5 comedies. Okay, that kind of thing. You have a question there? No. Okay. Tired? So one film distributor was saying, well, you don't do anything with 1 film. And there are a lot of Mexican distributors with only 1 film. So they go to the movie theater chain, and they say, like, OK, see you next year. You know? This idea of canning, putting in a can, in a shelf, the Mexican films. And basically, there's like always a deficit in terms of what it gets produced and what gets released, and the deficit. And you can say, OK, 2005, Mexican films produced 53. We got a deficit of 27. But if you accumulate that, by 2006, you got a deficit of 120 films to be released. So it's like it's accumulating. It's accumulating. Theater size and show times matter, because Mexican film will get the smaller movie theaters and the worst times. Because you have more than 1 copy in a Cineplex, the time share will cascade, you know, from 3:30 to 4 to 6, 1 very close to the next one. So if you get at 3:45 or 6 or 5:30, and you just want to see a film, you go for the one that is earlier. You know, those kind of practices. Okay, let me show you this one. I know that we don't have time. But let me show you this one. It's Recuerdos. It was produced in 2003. It got a lot of awards, and it got released in 2006, just 1 week. And it was fighting against the Da Vinci Code. And it was tough. The whole thing was really, really tough. And this one is about immigrants.
Mucho. Y lo que me preocupaba al pasar la frontera es lo que quedaba atrás. Lo que quedaba atrás eran cientos y cientos de miles de muertos. Cientos y cientos de hogares destruidos. Miles y miles de cuerpos maltrechos y mutilados. Los recuerdos de juventud que se transformaban en otras tantas añoranzas. Una España en ruinas económica y culturalmente que quedaba a merced de una negra dictadura y sobre todo la muerte de una esperanza que teníamos los españoles libertarios por lo menos de crear en España una sociedad para entregarla como ejemplo al mundo. Esto es lo que me dolía.
Mi madre cuenta la tristeza que le daba, todo lo que vio con la gente que estaba pasando ahí. Filas y filas de gente que pasaban por nuestra casa, gente cansada, mal vestida y triste, mujeres con bultos que eran sus niños, sus bebés muertos que los llevaban envueltos. Me dio un jarro de leche y me dijo que se los lleve a esta gente. Y me acuerdo cómo caminaba con este jarro, como si este jarro sería lo más precioso del mundo. Y me acuerdo darle el jarro, lo subí hacia la gente, y un hombre la tomó y nada más bebió 1 o 2 tragos e inmediatamente se lo pasó a otro. Y yo vi como el otro haría lo mismo, bebería 1 o 2 tragos. Y yo me acuerdo de pensar, pero ¿por qué no se lo beben todos? Es claro que tienen tanta sed y al mismo tiempo nada más beben un poquito y se lo pasan al próximo. Yo no sabía, estos eran refugiados españoles que estaban saliendo de España, caminando.
It was a documentary about Spanish immigrants and also Ukrainian immigrants, different immigrations because of war, the Spain Civil War and World War II. And that was what they were talking about. And this film got distribution thanks to the support of the state, but only had like 4 copies, 1 week, was going against the Da Vinci Code. And there are like 3 problems that the filmmaker recorded, registered. And at one time, she went to a movie theaters, and the show was canceled due to a small attendance. That's what they said. Then a few days later, she went to another movie theater, and they said that they were running into technical problems. And it was like, if you go to watch this documentary, we don't know if we're going to screen it because there are some technical problems. But you can see the Da Vinci Code if you want to, that kind of thing. In another theater, they said it was sold out. She still got a ticket to see another film. She went to the movie theater and they were showing already another film. Those kind of things you will see. And that's what I said, it's never seen before. Not the documentaries, but the practices. And Isordia, who did another documentary in 1973, he said at one point, the movie theater chain that was screening his documentary, they told him that the Hollywood distributors were calling to see if they can just pull his documentary out because they needed like a data space. He also got like a very amateur distributor, and I know the distributor of En El Hoyo, who is also a documentary made by the Juan Carlos Rulfo. They prefer this time, instead of going with the same strategy, with the old strategy they got for Del Olvido al No Me Acuerdo, this time with this new documentary, they said, you know what? We're going to do it on our own. We're going to be our own distributor. We don't want to deal with any other problems with any other distributors. So basically, they got into that. There was a problem with one of the movie theater chains. They pulled it out at one point. They have to talk about the rules, like the contract they got, and they put it back. But those are the kind of things you get to see there. Juan Carlos Rulfo, when he talks about Del Olvido No Me Acuerdo, that was 2000, he was saying that there's a chance that the audience will receive well these works. But if you promote them as a documentary, they're going to say, no, this is boring, I'm not going. So there's a problem with the perception of we have of the documentary, but also with the practices. It's very, very complicated because the film industry in Mexico has a lot of vested interest between exhibitors and distributors. And this is basically the control of Hollywood studios. That's a fact. And if in the Mexican film industry is not producing in a large volume films to have an impact in the industry, they will. I mean, this situation will stay just as it is. So that's basically what I have to say, and I don't know if you have questions.